So what I'm doing here is I'm choosing a good side of my shelf board. And I've got these band boards that I'm going to put on the front edge. They're 1 inch by 3/4. They provide a little bit of lip on the downside. So I put the good side of the shelf up, and then for the band board, I basically looked at them and inspected them and have put the good side out, and I've crowned them so that the crown is up. That way, as weight gets on it, it'll help straighten it out and make the shelf look good. They're overcut just a little bit because on final cut up on these to the right dimension, I'll just cut these at the same time, and then I won't have to worry about making sure that everything's perfectly snug. What I do is I just simply take and put a bead of glue down here. Then I just run, make sure it's all pretty evenly spread out on it. So I lay my band up here on top of this, and I just make sure that there's a little bit of hanging over each edge. I try to get it as close as I can to this edge right here, to the top surface of my shelf, because it requires less sanding down once I get there. And I'm using a 23 gauge pin nailer to just set a few pins in here. They're not really adding too much structural support, just more or less holding it to keep it from sliding. If I was doing flush on both sides, I would probably use tape. And then I'll put it in the clamps. Put it in the clamp like that, and then repeat. Then I'll put my clamps in here. I got a caul here. The clamps squeeze pretty tight, so I don't really need a caul on the front because they're pretty smooth. Won't damage it. Now you'll notice here, this board, this caul, to protect this backside of this plywood is actually bowed. You can see it's flat here, but then it's bowed. I just like that on purpose, so when I squeeze this guy in, he's actually putting a lot more pressure in the center. It's a trick that you can actually use to glue these up without needing as many clamps. So I put a couple of clamps here on top also. Just go through here and check them. Top clamps add some counter sway to them. I like to make sure that they're all flat and adjust the boards accordingly so that they stay flat. And after about 30 minutes, I should be able to remove them out and let them finish drying. It's just to let the glue set up. Okay, so this panel's been drying for probably 30 minutes to an hour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the clamps, and then we'll scrape any squeeze out from the glue. So you can see it's got a little bit of squeeze out here, which isn't too bad, and the same on this one. So between scraping the squeeze out and the flush trim router, we'll knock this off pretty quick. So over here is where I'm just using the 4-way scraper, and it's great for scraping squeeze out. This blade here is really sharp. It'll actually act like a real scraper and scrape wood shavings off. My overall goal here is basically to get any of the squeeze out off and any excess glue, so when I come through here with a flush trim to make this flush, it doesn't ride on it and create ripples. Sometimes it does, and you still got to kind of clean it up a little bit afterwards. Try to minimize that so you can just hit it with flush trim and then go straight to sanding. Then on this side, the underside, which is just going to take a coat of clear finish, I like to run a 5-way painter's tool. It's a little heavier than a putty knife, and just kind of scrape along here at one side and then scrape over here at the other side. And kind of clean up that edge. And unfortunately, right here, I did not knock out a piece of the veneer, but that's fine. But I'm more concerned about this gap here where the board wasn't perfectly even. So on this side, you can see it even more. I should have put this on the back side, which is my X was for, but I wasn't paying attention. So I'll have to take some putty and fill in there before I actually sand this down, but that's really no big deal. So now that our shelves are glued together, what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to trim off one edge. I'm going to trim off the edge at the miter saw. So this is nice and square, and then we'll go get this to length, and I like to make my shelves about 1/4 inch less than the width of the interior of the cabinet box. That way you have room for the shelf brackets. The ones I'm using on this particular job are 1/16 inch thick, so when you multiply that up by 2, one for each side, you end up with an 1/8 inch, and then it gives an 1/8 inch little play between it. I'm going to square this edge up over here on my miter saw by cutting this way. That way I'm not messing up the surface here. Once I get these glued on, sometimes there's a little bit of a lip here. What I use is a flush trim router bit on my little handheld here, and I like to set the cutting teeth just so it's just shy of hitting where the plywood is. That way you won't accidentally embed into the plywood. It may leave a little ridge, but then a palm sander or orbital sander will just knock that ridge down when you're doing the final sand. This is just to get this close to this here. So like here, there's a lip. It'll take most of that off, and I'll run this down, back. This will be nice and smooth, and I'll do this to every shelf after this. What I've also done is I've taken and stuck a 1/2 inch piece of wood in here, because each one of these is about 1/4, so it allows it to sandwich in there and create a nice flat surface to run this on. So what I've got here is there's a couple of glue spots that didn't come clean. So I'm just going to scrape that off. You can also see how it's peeling that little lip up right there that was left. This scraper is extremely sharp. So it's actually flush now, except for these little ridges where that glue was. So I'm going to hit that again now that I've scraped that off. Everywhere there was a little bit of a glue where the bearing ran. Right here, there's a little bit of glue right there. It created these little lips. Sanding this down on a sander will take care of that. Now that we got it cut to size, so it's 1/4 inch shorter than the inside of the carcass, what I'm going to do is I'm going to thoroughly sand both sides, the front and the bottom, to 120, 150 grit, and then it'll be prepped for clear coat finish. Here is my shelves, how I'm spraying them. I just simply got a couple of scrap runners and I just set them on there, and I spray one side and 2 edges each time. Since I'm doing the top, I'm basically spraying the top and front edge and this edge that's closest to us. When they were flipped over, I did the other edge and the back side and the bottom edge of the shelves. But this is how I've been spraying these, and it works out pretty good. With all the shelving and the drawer fronts, bottom of the shelves have 3 coats of finish on it, and the drawers each have 3 coats on each side. Tops of the shelves currently have 1 coat of finish on it, and I'm going to put 1 more coat of finish on it. You can see it's pretty glassy smooth based on the way it's reflecting. It is very nice, it's very smooth, but I want to put 1 more coat on for just some durability, and then we'll call it done. Vent for my spray area in my garage that I'm using. It's merely hooked up to a little turbine that then goes into a box, so I can put an 8-inch line and into my spray booth up above. It's working pretty good. Keeps everything fresh air flowing in and all the fumes blowing out. So my shelves are all done, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put at least 1 shelf in here, and once we get organized to where we want the shelves, then we'll rearrange them. But I just want to show how the shelves go in. They're all finished. Each side has 3 coats of clear finish on it, so they look really nice. They're really smooth. They're cut to fit right in here. Now, I've got these antique bronze, but they're pretty close to our oil rub finish hardware that's on the cabinet, so that's why I got this. It was the closest I could find. They sell them in 50 packs, and with the amount of shelves that we're going to have, I actually got quite a few of them, because each one of these uppers is going to have 3 shelves, and each base cabinet will have 1 shelf. So I'm going to get started here on putting one of these shelves in, and they're really simple. These are like little L brackets, 1/4 inch shelf pins. So what I like to do to start with, keep in mind these are completely adjustable. I just take one of our tall cups and stick it in here, and I need the bottom of the shelf to be a little above that, so I think I'm going to go with hole number 3 on this. The shelf pins just push right in. Occasionally you might find one that's a little tough and you might need to twist it a little bit to get it going, but generally they go right in. So once you get the shelf pins in, then it's simply just putting in your shelf. That's pretty much the process of putting these shelves in. Is just basically someone like myself or my wife determining where everything needs to go and basically pushing these shelf pins into the holes and putting them in the shelves. The shelves are a 1/4 inch smaller than the interior size of the cabinet, so they fit relatively nice. They don't have a lot of slide to side. There's a little bit of front and back, but not very much. I left a 1/4 inch between the back of the face frame and the front of the shelf, so that's pretty much it.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.